The Mississippi River, April 27, 1865. The river, a lifeline of the nation, flowed quietly under the cover of night, unaware of the impending disaster. A gentle breeze whispered through the darkness, carrying with it the scent of spring and the promise of a new beginning. The steamer Sultana, lights twinkling like stars on the water, churned northward against the current, its paddle wheels slicing through the calm surface. On board, weary passengers, many of them soldiers, dreamed of home and the loved ones they had not seen in years. They were survivors, recently released from Confederate prisons, their bodies weak but their spirits hopeful. The war was over. Peace lay ahead, a peace they had fought so hard to achieve and were now eager to embrace. But peace would not come for those on the Sultana. Not this night. The darkness held a secret, a terrible fate waiting to unfold. At 2 a.m., a monstrous roar shattered the stillness, a sound so loud it seemed to split the night in two. The Sultana's boilers, strained to their limits, exploded with unimaginable force. Timbers splintered, metal shrieked. The night was filled with chaos and terror. Men, women, and children were hurled into the icy water, their cries for help echoing in the darkness. The Sultana, once a symbol of hope and reunion, became a scene of unimaginable horror, its flames lighting up the night sky. This is the story of America's deadliest maritime disaster, a tragedy largely forgotten by history, overshadowed by the end of the Civil War. This is the story of the Sultana, a tale of hope turned to horror in the blink of an eye. The Sultana was a sidewheel steamboat built in Cincinnati in 1863. She was a marvel of her time, a symbol of industrial progress and ingenuity. She was a product of war, designed to transport troops and supplies for the Union Army. Her robust construction and powerful engines made her an essential asset in the Union's logistical operations. Her spacious decks, intended for commerce, became crowded with soldiers. These decks, once meant for goods and passengers, now teemed with the life and energy of young men heading to the front lines. The Sultana was a workhorse, plying the Mississippi River relentlessly. Day and night she navigated the treacherous waters, her paddle wheels churning tirelessly. She carried ammunition, food, and reinforcements to beleaguered Union outposts. Her holds were filled with the lifeblood of the army, ensuring that the soldiers had what they needed to continue the fight. She ferried wounded soldiers away from the front lines. These men, broken and battered, found a semblance of safety and care aboard her decks. With the end of the Civil War, the Sultana took on a new mission, bringing Union prisoners home. These men, who had endured the unimaginable, now saw the Sultana as their beacon of hope. These men, emaciated and weak from years of confinement, boarded the Sultana with hope in their hearts. They dreamed of reuniting with their families, of returning to a life of peace and normalcy. They had survived the horrors of war. They yearned for home. The Sultana was their vessel of salvation, a promise of a new beginning. They did not know that the Sultana, their vessel of hope, would become their watery grave. In a tragic twist of fate, the steamboat that symbolized their freedom would lead them to their untimely end. The Sultana was built to carry 376 passengers. On that fateful night in April 1865, she carried over 2,400 souls. The decks were jammed with men, so tightly packed they could barely move. The overcrowding was a result of greed and indifference. Government agents eager to clear the prisoner of war camps cut corners and ignored safety regulations. The Sultana's captain, J. Cass Mason, accepted bribes to overload his vessel. Each additional passenger meant more money in Mason's pocket. It was a devil's bargain, paid for in human life. The stage was set for a catastrophe. Section 4. Inferno on the Water. The Sultana's final moments. This tragic event remains one of the most devastating maritime disasters in American history. The explosion ripped through the Sultana with the force of a thunderbolt, shattering the calm of the night. The once majestic steamboat was now a scene of utter chaos and destruction. One of her boilers, hastily patched after a leak, had ruptured. The repair was a temporary fix, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. The pressure had built up to a catastrophic level. Scalding steam and chunks of metal tore through the crowded decks, turning the vessel into a deadly inferno. Passengers and crew were caught off guard with no time to react. Fire erupted, fueled by the wooden superstructure. The flames spread rapidly, consuming everything in their path. The wooden decks and cabins became a blazing inferno. The night sky turned crimson as flames danced across the water. The reflection of the fire on the river created an eerie, almost surreal scene. It was a nightmarish vision of hell on water. Screams pierced the darkness, the desperate cries of men engulfed in fire and water. The air was filled with the sounds of agony and despair, a haunting symphony of suffering. Those who were not killed outright faced a horrifying choice: burn alive or jump into the frigid waters of the Mississippi. The icy water offered a slim chance of survival, but it was a desperate gamble. Many, weakened by their time in prison, did not have the strength to swim. Their bodies, already frail and exhausted, could not withstand the cold and the current. They clung to debris, their cries swallowed by the roar of the flames and the hiss of escaping steam. The river, usually a source of life, had become a watery grave for many. Section 5. The Aftermath. Whispers in the Wind. The Sultana burned and sank in less than 20 minutes. Over 1,700 people perished. More than the Titanic, more than any other maritime disaster in American history. The response to the disaster was muted. The nation, still reeling from the assassination of President Lincoln, had little capacity for grief. Newspapers filled with accounts of Lincoln's death and the end of the war gave the Sultana sinking, scant coverage. There were investigations, of course. Congressional hearings were held. But no one was ever held accountable for the overcrowding, the negligence, the greed that led to the tragedy. Section 6. Lost in the Shadow of Tragedy. The Sultana disaster faded from public memory. Overshadowed by the events of the Civil War, it became a footnote in history books, a whisper in the wind. Why was the Sultana forgotten? Perhaps it was simply too much to bear, another wound on a nation already scarred by war. Perhaps it was easier to forget, to move on. But the dead deserve to be remembered. Their stories deserve to be told. Section 7. Remembering the Sultana, a call to honor the forgotten. The Sultana disaster stands as a stark reminder of the human cost of greed and indifference. It is a story that must be told, not only to honor the memory of those who perished, but also to ensure that such a tragedy never happens again. We must remember the Sultana. We must remember the men, women, and children who boarded that ill-fated vessel, dreaming of home, only to find death in the cold waters of the Mississippi. Let their story be a call to action, a reminder that safety regulations are written in blood, a testament to the enduring power of hope, even in the face of unimaginable tragedy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear your suggestions for future videos. Drop your ideas in the comments below.